right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to tonight's program at the Champaign Public Library. I am Madeline Wolski, I'm the business librarian, and tonight we are joined by Alex Gorsuch, a fantastic engineer, entrepreneur, and startup mentor. So first, before we get started, I'm gonna share some quick library information. Oop, too far. All right, so we are open again to the public with the exception of we're experiencing a snowstorm right now. Today is February 15th. So today and tomorrow, the 16th, we will be closed to the public. So on a normal day, we are open Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Sunday from noon to 6 p.m. I encourage you all to look into our Book a Librarian appointment. So essentially you can schedule a one-on-one consultation with any of our librarians if you go to champaign.org/bookalibrarian. You can also ask us questions online during our open hours at our live chat or email us at your convenience at librarian@champaign.org. So a few things about Zoom. So if you want to move your mouse into the lower left-hand corner, you'll see some audio options where you can control which microphone the sound is coming out of and the sound volume itself. In the middle of your screen, you'll see a chat option, and I encourage you all to use this if you have any questions for me to ask Alex, or if you have any tech issues, or even if you want to communicate with those around you and within the class. I do want to make sure that you're making sure that you are entering in, essentially making sure you're not sending that just to the panelists. If you want to talk with everyone else, make sure you select send to all. And lastly, again, if you need any help, just feel free to shoot a chat question and I will convey it to Alex and we'll answer it to the best of our abilities. All right, so without further ado, Alex, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and take over the screen sharing. And let me know.
All right.
Great.
All right. Awesome. Now, give me one moment while I bring up a presentation. Navigate around the very unnecessarily complicated interface that is Zoom. I think it was made by pigeons. So, all righty. And let me just bring up my chat on another window. And I've got a relatively light presentation prepared. Not long, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but what I want to spend most of my time doing is answering questions. Particularly in the age of COVID, it is just not fun to watch someone drone on for more than half an hour, in my opinion. So I would like to keep that less than that time for y'all and primarily answer your questions. So my name's Alex. Today I'm going to be talking about getting ahead with social media. But before I do that, I want to talk just a little bit about my journey and sort of who is this bearded backwoods person talking to you all who looks like he's never seen a computer before. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, engineer, and mentor. I've built over 100 products and worked with over 1,000 teams. I build what's called low swap C, so low size, weight, power, and cost ruggedized systems. Think tactical autonomous systems, human performance tech, diagnostics, sensor tech. My first startup was focused around building a portable microbiology lab in a box for the Department of Defense and medical customers. I spent years and a whole lot of money, more than most people spend on their collegiate education, developing a 35-pound ruggedized solution with integrated power and wireless comms. And that was all for running genetic amplification, microscopy, polymerase chain reaction, loop-mediated isothermal amplification, blah, 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 blah. My customers didn't care. And I would bet most of you stopped listening after the second feature. I built the darn thing, and I don't care anymore. What I'm doing now, what I just did, reciting feature after feature, is the problem with most engineering problems. Because I didn't know the ways to connect with my customers and do the research to engage them and understand what they needed, predominantly through social media, I built a whole bunch of time and money building something that I thought was badass. And when I would go to people and show it to them and say, hey, look what I built, this is very nice, right? They would, of course, say, yes, that's wonderful. You'd save us so much money, because that is what humans have been wired to do since birth. When someone presents you with their passion project, you don't crap all over it and tell them how it's terrible. But with insight gained from social media, you can really understand what your target customer actually needs. So I should have spent my time understanding the stakeholder and building the lean tool they really wanted. So they didn't want a 35-pound Pelican case that had a solar-powered biology lab in it. They wanted small little test units they could take with them out in the field to run one little test when they needed it. That was their need, and I just didn't have the training or the cunning at the time to really seek it out, because I thought I knew best and I didn't value social media and customer discovery. I was also trying to use disruptive innovation, but I wasn't disrupting in the right way. These days, I teach National Science Foundation I-Corps and Hacking for Defense here at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, work on my own ventures, and I have mentor and EIR roles from Alaska to Azerbaijan, which is really fantastic geographically, but less so alphabetically. I've also served as a subject matter expert for the Air Force Research Labs, NASA, AFWERX, and the Space Force, and I teach similar courses for the Departments of Defense, Energy, National Nuclear Security Administration, NIST, Homeland Security, and Veterans Affairs. Recently, I launched a new company called Ascent Integrated Tech, where we focus on smart mask retrofits to enhance human performance in austere environments. We're currently negotiating some Air Force and OEM dev contracts and have pilots secured with firefighters in 9 states. And for those of you who can see the video stream, that's why I have a bunch of scary looking gas masks behind me. Those are actually prototypes. So why talk about customer discovery in a social media talk? 2 reasons. First, product market fit is the single biggest indicator there is of startup success and of small business success. Second, social media is a phenomenal tool for this. So focus of my talk is going to be on social media and how to utilize it for research and how to engage with your customers. But I do want to talk a bit about customer discovery. This is a very large topic. I can and do teach multiple courses on it. So I'm going to discuss a little bit. It's 4-part. It's very data-driven. First, you build hypotheses. These are specific, quantifiable, actionable, role and use-focused theories that you build about your customers. And then you can build experiments. You can figure out who to talk to, why, and what to ask to invalidate or validate your hypothesis about customer behavior. Finally, go test it. You can go talk to your customers, don't sell to them, be an active listener, really understand first what they need before you pitch into the customer acquisition phase, because you really need to understand their needs to build a business around that problem market fit. The same is true for social media. It's an experiment. If you think something is going to work on social media, awesome. Try it. And if it goes terrible and you get no traction and no one pays attention to your post, that's okay, because the social media, just like the news cycle, it's short. It's very short. You can move quickly. Your customers probably forgot what you posted within 5 days anyway, if it's a bad post. So you can figure out what works and iterate on that until you can find a proven solution. Additionally, I just want to talk about conferences. People talk about, how do I get in touch with my customers? How do I talk with them? Well, even in a global pandemic, your industry is meeting. So since they're online, these conferences, it's cheaper to attend because you don't have to pay for airfare, you don't have to pay for a hotel, etc. And you can attend a conference in your PJs, which is awesome. I'm teaching right now in my PJs. Very, very comfortable. And so what you want to do is find the hashtags that's specific for that specific industry conference. People are posting with it, and that's a lot easier and cheaper than buying the attendee list of that conference. Find thought leaders and engage with them. Talk with them. So what is a thought leader other than a fancy new agey sounding term? At its most basic, the people who with the most posts and engagement surrounding said conference are going to be the thought leader. They're going to be the people who are most engaged in your industry, seeking new solutions. Outside of specific techniques, though, there's 3 key pillars of social media. Content, meaning, are you providing something that your customers actually give a darn about? Or are you just trying to be self-serving? Frequency, meaning, are you posting with enough frequency for them to listen and expect your post and be delighted by them? Or do you only post, when you have a sale or when it only suits you, once every year, once every 6 months or something? If you want to build an online social media presence, you have to be diligent and you have to be frequent about it. And finally, engagement. Are you giving more than taking? Are you being reciprocative? Are you responding to your audience's needs? And are you actually showing that you want to engage with them instead of just trying to get what you want from them? So what does content failure look like? First of all, it looks like getting blocked. So don't get blocked. Now, a lot of social media posts tend to default to sales pitch. Now, I don't know about y'all, but when I see one of those, whether I'm on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or whatever I'm on, I usually unfollow that person or that company. I just don't find them terribly interesting. Now, maybe it happens to be something I wanted anyway, and that works out, but I can't think of a single time where I haven't just unfollowed, blocked, etc. Someone posting something that's obviously just a direct ad. And this seems common sense, but it's always worth saying. Don't post political things and don't post personal things. Now, I will note, unless that's your brand and unless that resonates with your audience, I'd avoid it. So what do some successes look like in content? What is success too? Meaning get followed, meaning people want more. They want to engage with your content. They want to see more. So on the left, this is Black Rifle Coffee Company. They had a whole series of really quite phenomenally funny, but quite political, because that was their niche and because that was their goal. A very sort of right-wing, veteran-focused, armed services-focused coffee, essentially. Who knew coffee could ever be politicized? Well, this company did it, and they did a really great job. So all their stuff is very tailored to their audience. They know what their audience likes, and they post things for their audience. If someone isn't the intended audience, it's probably just not going to be that useful to them, or it might even be offensive. That's okay, because they're going after their audience. And in the middle here, I've got a nice picture of the new Ford Hybrid F-150. Now, this is on Instagram, and it's tailored to platform. It's very much what people expect to see, right? Someone posts on Twitter, they're going to want to see, that 140 or 280 or whatever they just increased it to in the past couple of years, tailored to platform, right? If it's a Facebook post, it's going to be a different style. If it's an Instagram post, it's really predominantly going to be about that picture. And finally, providing inspiration. This one on the right is from Lululemon. It is a extremely overpriced Under Armour alternative. My wife likes it. I've never bought any of their clothes. Gym shorts are cheap and they're great. But this is an extremely inspirational post. And that's really what a lot of social media is about. You're not selling your product. You're not even selling your company. You're selling the story. You're selling the vision. You're selling the inspiration. You're selling a shared vision that people can buy into and can literally share in the case of social media. And what about failures in frequency? So what I mean by failures in frequency is teams who only post every so often, every few months, maybe when they're only having a sale, not enough to really build an audience, right? Because someone liking one of your posts is not enough to build an audience. But someone liking your post, continuing to see what you look for, posting more and more, maybe tagging you in their post. That's building an audience. That's building a rapport. And if you don't do it often enough, customers won't care when you do post. So you're going to just waste your time posting unless you're posting with enough frequency. And customers will learn pretty quickly if you only engage when you can get value from them, i.e., come buy my stuff. They're going to stop providing value to you in return. Stop resharing, stop liking, stop commenting, stop replying, just stop engaging with your brand. In the same vein, they're not going to care to follow if you only take, right? There's this 80-20 Paretos rule. So in this case, give 80% and take 20%. Focus predominantly on finding what you can do for your customer, not what they can do for you. And what they can do for you will follow once you've found that niche and that interest from them. So what can success look like? So you can see here on the left, this is actually one of my social media posts. It's from LinkedIn roughly a week ago. When I have a big week, probably every other week, I do a weekly roundup where I just, I'll say what I did each day, kind of a highlight. I'll be tagging people as appropriate, mentioning what I did, hashtagging as appropriate to really draw in my community. So you can see here, I talked about some of my work with the USDA. I talked about some of my work with SBIR grants, National Security Innovation Network, course I teach at the university, course I guest lectured at, some stuff I do, excuse me, with the Air Force, some stuff I do over at Westland with guest lecturing over there, ICOR, lean startup workshops, friend of mine that was coming over to have some homemade meat and kind of talk about challenges faced in my industry. The point is, I do these pretty regularly. I try to post at least once every 2 weeks, if not more, because then people can see that repetitive pattern and they'll know to keep looking and checking. Next, staying relevant. So if you look here at the middle one, this is again Ford Motor Company. I'm not a Ford versus Chevy versus Dodge guy. I don't care as long as my car gets me from point A to point B. So please, no questions about my favorite car brand at the end of the talk. My point with this post was, this is an ad for the Ford Motor Company. Why are they posting about antivirus protective measures? Well, it's because this is 2020 and 2021. This is the age of COVID. They're staying relevant. They're engaging with their content on something they know that their audience is going to have, near and dear to their heart in these crazy, tumultuous times. And finally, use software. Hootsuite is just one of many examples. You can schedule your social media posts with it. You can set yourself a reminder email to posts. You can schedule posts. I mean, there's a million different software solutions out there. I have one that reminds me every 3 weeks to post. If I haven't posted by then it'll notice and it'll disable that automatic warning or that automatic notification. Well, my point is, if you're running a business, you got a bunch of stuff on your mind, and use software to keep as much of the drudgery, like remembering to post, out of your mind. So what does engagement failure look like? That means that you're only engaging with yourself, right? It is social media for a reason. It's not lonely media. You have to engage with your customers and your stakeholders. Like I said, you're here for a reason. And again, these seem common sense, but you'd be very surprised. Don't ignore messages, or what will happen? People will stop messaging you, unsurprisingly. Next, don't ignore your posts. The follow-up to your posts is almost as important as the post itself, because that shows that you really give a darn about your community and you're invested in them and you care what they have to say. engagement success. What does that mean? Like I said, this is a social network. So giving first. This post here on the left, again, one of mine. This is for FedTech. It is a organization out of DC that I teach courses with. They do national security stuff. And the first team here was doing a technology for LiDAR for building digital twinning assets for repairs and retrofits of Navy vessels, as well as Coast Guard interdictions. And the second was about a team that is working on near field power or far field power transmission. This post was me merely congratulating people. I don't have any financial interest in these companies, although they are both good friends of mine. So really focusing on how you can give, because people are going to notice those who are giving, posting engaging content, being social on social media, and wanting to give back, wanting to reciprocate, instead of those just posting. And next, respond. Like I said, don't leave unread messages. Here's this sort of classic example, right? 4,000 unread emails. No matter what it is, whether it's your email or your Facebook or your LinkedIn or your Twitter, if someone DMs you or if someone responds to a post, respond, because that is where the real engagement is. Like I said, I personally find that more important than the original post itself. And finally, interact. So this was a comment stream from that weekly update slide that I showed 2 or 3 slides ago. Just engaging with some of the people that I'd tagged and some others in my community. Again, showing them that I'm interested in what they say. I'm interested in their thanks. In helping build their brand, because I can build mine. Now, like I said, I wanted to spend most of this time hearing your questions, understanding your problems, because particularly in the age of COVID, I find that infinitely more interesting than hearing some Yahoo talk on for half an hour. So before we get into questions, I've got my LinkedIn here, linkedin.com/in/AE Gorsuch. Please do not hesitate to connect. I love connecting with people. Shoot me a message, say what you're working on, etc. Love to connect. And I also made a calendar link. You can schedule a half-hour chat with me. And whether it's about social media or entrepreneurship or whatever, just engage. I love mentoring. I love connecting with people. Love hearing what they're working on. And I will post the link to this presentation in the chat, as well as both of these links as well, to make y'all's life easy.
Well, thank you so much. And we will also be sending a recording of this presentation out to everyone who had registered, and also upload that to our YouTube channel. So Alex, I do have a couple of questions for you, and awesome. A lot of them were sent via email, which I think is a great way to kind of, for people who aren't able to make it. Again, the beauty of these webinars are that they can be recorded and watched at a later date. So the first question is, what should a great LinkedIn business profile contain in the About section? Is this your mission statement? Should you cater the language a little bit more to a more casual tone? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. So my answer is unfortunately not so cut and dry. Like, sadly, many things in life, the answer is it depends with an asterisk. Honestly, it really depends on your brand. I think even in the short talk, you've all kind of gotten the sense from me that I try to be a fairly casual and conversational guy. That's part of my brand. Like I said, it depends on the business. I will say, generally speaking, people on social media do respond to more not necessarily casual language, but a more sort of friendly demeanor. I have seen some of the most serious businesses you would believe businesses who are working on directed microwave energy weapons for the Air Force. Use a not necessarily a casual tone, an unprofessional tone, but really trying to break it down to brass tacks. So at the end of the day, I like mission statements. I like vision statements. They serve their purpose. I've personally found those serve a broader purpose, more internal to the organization. I've not often found many mission statements, particularly for startups, particularly for small businesses, really resonate with me on a personal level. Now, of course, for large businesses, right? Google, they used to have the motto of, or the mission statement of "Don't be evil." I think that's a pretty cool mission statement. I like it, even if, of course, everyone does have privacy concerns about Google. But yeah, for my 2 cents, in your about section, focus on what the customer or your stakeholder cares about. I'm going to extend this even more broadly than just a commentary on social media. Most social media for companies, even most websites for companies, I've found they lack purpose. So why do you have a social media? Why do you have a website? It depends. Probably if you're a small business, a Main Street business, it's to get customers. If it's a tech startup and you're in the middle of a fundraising round, it's to get money. Well, it's to get smart money, but it's to get money. If you're trying to do B2B or B2G sales, it's to make those sales. So focus on what is the thing that you get for your customer, right? What is the thing that you can provide them, and what is the thing you want from them? I've often not found those in mission statements. I hope that answered that person's question.
I think it did pretty well. I think I'm also going to add on to that. So, well, first I'll cover this question that was in our chat. Which tool do you use if not Hootsuite? So, and again, Hootsuite was the online software that you can use to organize multiple social media streams.
Yeah, so I personally use, honestly, a bunch between presentation software, like the presentation you just saw, beautiful.ai, the calendar link that you all saw, calendar.x.ai, between just all kinds of things. I probably spend a good $200 a month in various softwares just to make my life slightly easier in each domain. For specifically tracking social media posts and prodding me to post itself, I use a combination of Airtable, which is a Google Docs spreadsheet like software, which is just absolutely phenomenal. It's basically the best spreadsheet software there is. You can categorize and sort it, and it's very, very filter friendly, particularly for an organization nerd like me. I use that, and then I also use a tool called Zapier, Zapier, which is for automating things. And I also use if this then that, IFTTT. I think I got the right number of T's there. But essentially, those will work together to prod me to either follow up with a post, follow up with an email, follow up with a message, or to remind me to post when I haven't posted on that 3-week cycle. There are honestly so many social media tools out there. There very well may be one significantly better than the hodgepodge of things that I use. I did use Hootsuite for a while. That was when one of my older companies was running like a very direct social media campaign exclusively for one particular product, that portable lab in a box. We were targeted for STEM education at the time. I personally found Hootsuite itself a little on the expensive side, but there's honestly so many different softwares out there that I couldn't possibly name all of them let alone the best. It's just what I've found that works for me.
And I'll be sure to, once I send the email out about this, it'll also include the names of these and the corresponding links.
Awesome.
So, yeah. Oh, and thanks for sharing your LinkedIn again, Alex. So back to that follow-up question from the essentially what to put in your profile. So you mentioned having this 80-20 rule for social media, like 80% engagement, 20% maybe some self-promotion. So how do you incorporate that within your profile? I mean, do you just limit it to putting in a link to maybe your business or personal website, or would it be worth maybe changing up that about every so often to include maybe I'm having a workshop at CPL this next week, here's the link, or how to treat that section?
Oh, absolutely. The more you update it, the better. Now let me again asterisk on there. Probably don't change like the majority of it. What I've seen people do is on like their LinkedIn or their Facebook, they'll have either the last 4 lines or so change or the first 4 lines or so with, maybe a new role, maybe a new, a new talk they have coming up or something. It's definitely important to keep that current and keep that changed. But you don't want to change it so much. Like don't change your entire about us, about me section, whether it's a business or, a personal social media. Don't change it like completely and totally, every 3 days. I mean, people would probably think there's like an insane monkey typing on your keyboard. Yeah.
Not to mention how exhausting that would be to keep up with.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a great example. I don't change. So the only time I change in particular, my about me section is when I've done something new or noteworthy. The other thing that I found in social media is a story is really, really engaging. So you know what? Actually, let me just share my screen and just go to my LinkedIn, and we can take a look at kind of my about me, because I found at least 3 times a week, people will tell me they loved reading my about me section because it's a story. All right. Let me know once that pops up.
All right, looks great.
Awesome. So, essentially, oh, I launched my first company this time. Here's what I worked on. While doing this, I realized how badly I'd screwed up. People love reading that. They love reading stories. They're just a lot more engaging on an instinctual and fundamental level than, just sort of a list of facts, right? Here's what I do. Here's what I do. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, this was pretty similar to what I said in my intro here. And then I pivot to, what I like about working with early stage entrepreneurs and kind of how they inspire me and sort of some of the problems they face. And then, sort of some things that I've enjoyed learning, some of my greatest strengths. And then I like to close with a joke. I make good mead. I can throw an axe well and enjoy wrangling my herd of dogs. I found this conversational story, draws people in. Like I said, I get compliments on it, I don't know, 3-4 times a week. Very, very often. If I've learned one thing, I've learned it's that humans are storytellers, right? So despite being at the intersection of, engineering and the military and medical stuff for most of my career, my undergraduate was in psychology at the university here. And I had a really stellar 2.78 GPA. I think there's probably a statue of me, lowest GPA ever, somewhere in the psych building. But, essentially, I learned in my time studying psychology, I learned to believe in people. And I learned to believe that people are storytellers and that nothing will resonate better with another human than with a story, or even to yourself. So, to slightly backtrack, when you had mentioned mission statements and vision statements, that's what they need to be. And same with corporate culture, whether you're, a 3-person startup tinkering in a garage, or, you know, a 500 word, a 500, you know, person company. Stories. It's shared stories that we tell ourselves while we work on a goal.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I also like the fact that having that kind of anecdote at the end, something that you're just interested in, makes you more approachable to people interested in connecting with you. It also gives them additional fodder to be like, oh, hey, you make mead? I've dabbled in cider making.
Yep.
And it also, yeah, again, I love how it allows people just become more comfortable in reaching out and vice versa.
Yeah, you know, absolutely. And then that's the other thing, right? You know, not to harp too much on the psychology thing, but humans are unsurprisingly human. You know, if I had had a thing here listing, you know, all the 100 plus products that I've worked on, and the thousands of teams I've worked on, and all the projects I've done and courses I've taught, like, I wouldn't want to go to that guy's social media page. He sounds like a pompous jerk, frankly. You know, but going to, you know, a story, you know, hearing, like you said, you know, seeing these little humanizing details, you know, oh, I've got a bunch of dogs, you know, I've got weird, obscure hobbies that made sense hundreds of years ago. I don't know, you know, I find it connecting. I've had probably a good 50, 60 people just connect with me on like the mead or the axe throwing as well. People say, oh, you know, that's so cool. I want to hear more about mead. And yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So this is kind of bringing it back to your introduction. When you were talking about essentially the cycle of customer discovery, I think it's after you create that hypothesis, but we have a comment who maybe you can expand upon why you don't start testing something out until after you've interviewed 50 stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been teaching customer discovery a long time. And I primarily learned that as an engineer, I can't build the kind of fun things that I want to build unless I'm an entrepreneur. And I'm not a successful entrepreneur unless I build what the customer needs. So to your point, Evelyn, I do not start at any of the fun stuff. I don't start any of the business planning. I don't fill out my mission model canvas or business model canvas, depending on the industry cluster I'm going after, until I've interviewed at least 50 stakeholders. I don't even think about the engineering in a real way. You know, I mean, I'm an engineering nerd, so I might, you know, sit and think at the end of the day or in the shower, you know, oh, how would I build that? You know, but I don't like sit down and plan any of the fun, nerdy bits until I've interviewed at least 50 people, because I don't know what they're going to need. I have no idea. So actually, if you want, I have a really fantastic other slide that illustrates that point. And let me just bring it up. It shouldn't take more than 10 seconds.
Yeah, and while you bring it up, I'll just mention, so this kind of touches upon Ling Canvas. So what we recommend you doing before you start your business plan. And last month, we did have a webinar about it. So I am happy to include that in the email as well, if you want to learn more about that model.
Absolutely. Please learn more about the Lean Canvas.
We
It
love
is
the Ling
amazing.
Canvas.
Yes. So I use it in both my in both my I-Core teaching, and then I also use it in my H40 teaching. I mean, it's such a fantastic tool for organizing thoughts. So another example of story time. So one of my first business competitions that I won was at University of New Mexico. It was the unsurprisingly named the University of New Mexico Business Plan Competition. Now, all the other teams turned in 50 plus pages of business plans, but the whole business plan for startup thing, it hasn't really stood the test of time, right? There's this thing, Tyson's Law. No plan survives getting punched in the face, or no plan survives first contact with the enemy, customer, you know, whatever fun metaphor you want to use. At the end of the day, you have to build your business as lean as possible, because statistically speaking, you're probably not going to be successful, but that's okay. And the truth of building a business, and what you have to remember, is a lot of teams want to shoot to be the unicorn, right? You know, the privately held company with a valuation of over $1 billion or whatever it is. Oh, great, perfect. Stridently hope everyone in the world gets there. I mean, not everyone, because then, you know, the dollar would be massively devalued. But, you know, stridently hope that everyone succeeds if that's what they want. But the truth is, most startups, like catastrophically low, most startups will ever become unicorns. Strictly speaking, most startups will probably not be successful. So don't approach your business thinking you're a unicorn. You're not beautiful, you're not majestic, you're not, you know, you don't have a whole bunch of employees yet, and that's okay, that's totally fine. That's what startups are. You're a lean, hungry pack of hyenas scavenging on the great plains of capitalism and the free market. You have to find a niche, you have to exploit it, and you have to solve a problem. And you have to figure out if you can be desirable to your customers, feasible to build what you need to build, and viable to not go bankrupt while you're building the stuff your customers need to solve their problem. So I'll quickly go through 2 examples. So I touched on this in my intro. Essentially, all of the answers I needed existed. I just didn't know where to look. I only sought confirmation bias. Here's a better example, and one that I did not touch on, regarding customer discovery. So in the 80s, one of the greatest moments in cinematic history was made with a wonderful movie starring Carl Weathers, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Jesse Ventura. They were a bunch of commandos that chased after an invisible alien monster in the jungle. This movie is Predator. And they had what they called the Predator Pack. It was essentially what you see here: a light machine gun, wielded by Carl Weathers, which was attached to a backpack full of bullets. Now, only recently has defense tech actually caught up to the magic of Hollywood. Say what you will, but Hollywood is by far the best technical innovators there are in the world. What they can produce is amazing. Now, like I said, I love working with the defense, NatSec, and IC communities. There's this really cool radical change in those communities, and they've recognized that the next great power war, the next real conflict against a near-peer adversary, it's not going to be won by handsome athletes. It's going to be won by ugly nerds, because that's the innovation that's needed. So most major electronic companies and products, Qualcomm, you know, I'm sure everyone has a phone, right? We're probably all watching this on Wi-Fi, unless you're crazy enough to have Cat 5 going throughout your house. All of that stuff started with SOCOM and DARPA funding. So this is a great example of that tech. Like I said, it's exactly what it looks like. Backpack full of bullets. The panes were really easy to figure out. It was 9 pounds lighter, and it had a bunch more bullets. So what did we thought? We thought, okay, great, you know, a lot more bullets, wonderful. Everyone's gonna love that, right? Like, if you have a gun and you're being shot at, you should have more opportunities to shoot back. Basic theory of engagement, right? But past a certain point, around 200 bullets, we found out it actually isn't even needed in their standard engagement, and more so, it'll actually melt the barrel. So through our customer discovery, not only was the primary thing that we thought the customer would really care about and be interested in, not only did they not give a darn, but it would actively harm them in their mission. And in their case, you know, staying alive and keeping their friends alive. So for us, that was a huge wake-up call. It was so surprising. So where did we learn where it was useful? Assault and counter-assault, not patrol. We also learned that those pains were incremental, percentage more, right? A percentage reduction in weight, a percentage increase in bullets. They were useful, certainly, but they weren't sexy. They weren't big thematic changes to how the user and how the customer could actually interact with the Browning M60. What we learned, what was really important, was this piece of technology could deploy across form factors and users. That's what really excited folks, that this could be used across vehicles, crew-served weapons, autonomous vehicles, everything. It could just be swapped in and out. That really excited them. But what we really were interested to learn was that this eliminated the need for an assistant gunner. Because typically there's a guy holding one of these and he's got a bunch of bullets in his backpack. And there's another person called an assistant gunner who has a rifle, but they also primarily carry a bunch of bullets. So we learned that that second person could be retasked to a job that was more useful than just being a glorified ammo mule. So that was just fascinating customer discovery for us, where we could not possibly have been more wrong in our understanding of the customer. And no amount of theorizing would actually have given us that information. We actually had to go out and talk to people and understand. All right. That's my most fun example. You are muted.
Sorry. No, that was fascinating. I guess I need to watch some more 1980s movies to get inspired.
Is that a comment that you've never seen Predator, or that you just haven't seen it in a long time?
I've never seen it.
Oh my gosh.
I apologize.
Oh my gosh.
So moving on to some more social media questions. So what kind of, so I guess the difference between a personal LinkedIn profile and then a business LinkedIn profile. So if people have both of these, how should they be posting on each of them? I know you had brought up those great examples from Ford, but I guess for you, do you manage a business LinkedIn account for any of your ventures? And or do you just use your personal account as the way to reach out on behalf of your business?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because I used to run a specific like a venture LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram using Hootsuite. I found it pretty good, but what I found much more successful is just doing the outreach personally. I mean, I'm sure y'all saw in that weekly update. I mean, the first 4 or 5 sentences, I talked about my latest venture, Ascent Integrated Tech. We're building the mask, and I talked about some updates. I talked about new pilots we're securing. I've personally found it much more effective coming from the human rather than from the faceless corporate page. Now, that being said, I think that's more specific to my industry and more specific to tech startups. But, like I said, customer discovery, using social media is a form of customer discovery, because you have to build hypotheses about what's going to work. Try on your personal. If that doesn't seem to be working, okay, make a business page. See if that works. Maybe it's your content, maybe it's the phrasing, maybe it's your terminology, maybe it's you don't have enough hashtags, or maybe you have too many hashtags. Just experiment and see what works. I personally have found it more successful to leverage a personal connection and a literal personal page when advocating on behalf of my businesses.
Okay, so are you linking to then your business website whenever you talk about stuff you're yeah, so you're linking the website, not the separate LinkedIn page. Okay.
Yes.
Great. So do you have any tips for people who are providing maybe online learning services? I know this is kind of your niche, so we had someone who had questions about that, just as far as, because I mean, they're trying to bring their services out to a lot of people, get those customers in, but I can see maybe them exploring different ways of using media in posts, providing examples. Do you have any thoughts on online service learning, or online learning services, excuse me?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess first I would probably need a bit more clarification, like, what industry, etc., to really provide like a fantastic answer. So I'll try and provide a pretty good answer instead of a fantastic answer, and hopefully I may hit the mark there. So I have found same thing, that personal approach. Now, granted, I'm not like running, like I said, I would need a bit more clarification. Like I don't run online learning as in like I run the whole, online classroom, so to speak. I mean, I work with the scaffold of, of other organizations and other providers, obviously University of Illinois, FedTech, DOD, DOE, et cetera. So, I engage with them and I provide meaningful content, and I will get sought out from my posts, to teach courses with them, to guest lecture, to whatever. It isn't, like I said, it's an interesting quandary. Without having more information, it makes it a little difficult to deliver a complete answer. I've found same thing, that personal approach is going to work well. And in addition, providing stories. Whether that's a story of someone who went through, who went through a course that you taught. So when I just did that Air Force SBIR sprint in conjunction with AFWorks here over at the university. And, one of the biggest selling points I got was not that we had 29 people who went from WTH is the AFWorks SBIR program to a full proposal. What was far more impactful is one of the people who went through it and just sent me a nice message, hey, thank you so much. I've been trying to get a SBIR in for, 3 years, and the whole process is, a lot more bureaucratic nonsense than it should be, and it's very complicated and stupid. But with your course, I was able to get it in. That to me and to my stakeholders was far more interesting, and I've been able to leverage that feedback more than any of the statistics behind it. So same thing, telling that story, right? 1,000 people is a number, one person is a story, and people connect with stories.
Absolutely. So one more quick question. And so this is when you're posting on multiple channels, so how do you do that if you have one message you want to get across? Some people, and I know this is kind of considered not the best practice, but taking the same post and duplicating it on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. What's your take on that?
So I'll answer in two parts. First, is that a better practice than only posting to one, or especially 0? Yes. Is it anywhere near as good of a practice as tailoring your message to each? Absolutely. So definitely alter it. So if you think about it, the message is not your text. It's not your pictures. It's not your hashtags. It's not where you tag people. It's not whatever, all the fun stuff you do. The message should be boiled down to, 10 words or less. Something really, really short and sweet that anyone can gather. And then the scaffold that you build around it, whether it's a LinkedIn and you really want to take that more business kind of social media, like, tagging, bringing in a bunch of stakeholders approach, or it's an Instagram and you want to have like a beautiful picture with, nice, that could be that exact 10-word caption that you're looking to get out there, or it's a Facebook or a Twitter where whatever it is, the message is not exactly what you type. The message is the intent. If you keep the intent the same across platforms, but the scaffold and someone smarter than me would have a better synonym to fit here. But the skeleton or whatever of it to make sure that it's adapted to the style of the platform, that's absolutely what you should do. But like I said, a post on one platform or 2 platforms or 3 platforms or 4 platforms or 5 or whatever is always better than less, but it's even better if you tailor.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting that Hootsuite and a lot of these other organizational places, they have these really great resources for people who are kind of struggling with what wording to use, what tone. I will also attach a reference. They put out a 2021 guide, and really cool stuff in there. They have those bigger words that I struggle to find.
Yeah, and actually on that subject, on word choice, use an active voice, use active verbs, be dynamic, be interesting, try and be, short and to the point. I try not to post on a specific thing for more than like 10 words, 2 sentences ish. Now, I mean, y'all saw, my most recent post. That was not a short post, but that was a post about, 7 days and, or 5 days and, 8 or so different activities across those days. The problems that I see with it, so I guess the mistakes I see with social media is the biggest is just not using it flat out. Second mistake is that posts are either way too long or way too short. They don't have enough meat for people to sink their teeth into and engage with, or there's just too much fat on the post and it's all gristly, or yeah, that they're just, not being frequent enough.
Well, that was fantastic. Since we are essentially out of time, I'm going to go ahead and thank you so much, Alex. This was a wonderful webinar, really great conversation, great points, and it was a pleasure talking with you this evening.
Thanks for having me.
So I will mention, I'm going to share my screen real quick. All right, so next week, I'm going to be leading a webinar on identifying your customers, and Alex touched on this a little bit, but this is essentially how to identify those 50 people that you want to talk to before creating that business plan. So we're going to be using some amazing library databases to analyze our area, go into some amazing demographics, and do a little bit of psychological profiling. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And again, this will also be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel. So going back, just reviewing over some library things. If you need some help, we are happy to be there for you. If you want to do a one-on-one appointment with any of our librarians, you just need to go to champaign.org/book-a-librarian to book that one-on-one appointment. You can also chat with us during our open hours from 9 to 6 Monday through Saturday and noon to 6 on Sunday. But you can also email us at your leisure whenever it works at librarian@champaign.org. All right, so I am Madeline Wolski. I'm the business librarian here at Champaign Public Library, and this was Alex Gorsuch, amazing serial entrepreneur, engineer, extraordinaire. So I want to just encourage you all, reach out if you have any questions. And I will also send any relevant ones Alex's way that you do have. And he also posted his information earlier, how to contact him on LinkedIn or on his calendar app. So without further ado, stay warm, drip your pipes so they don't freeze, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you all again for joining us tonight. And thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Bye.